rules are often upheld by other people. The boundaries you hold must be upheld by you. If my boundary gets knocked down, I know for sure.
And boundaries are not going to be honored if you're not expressing them. And then there's the trial period. You're not just going to be perfect. The moment that a boundary comes up, you can't expect the other person to completely, okay, I'll never miss again.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode, yesterday's episode, number 1664. Are you actually doing it for yourself? Today, for episode number 1665, the difference between rules and boundaries. So as we talked about in the ending of yesterday's episode, on our meetup about self-worth, somebody asked a question about what's the difference between rules and boundaries. And I'm 99.9% sure Amy wrote in the chat today that she asked that question.
Nice.
And there's a couple layers to it, because if you've never practiced setting boundaries before, you might not really know what a boundary is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's very easy to forget. If you've been doing something for a long time, it's easy to forget what it was like in the very beginning when you didn't know how to do that thing. You might not have even known what that thing was. And then, what does a boundary feel like versus a rule? What does a boundary setting look like? Like, what is a rule? What happens when somebody breaks a rule? What happens when somebody breaks a boundary? So, you and I were reflecting on the monthly meetup. And Alan said, what if we did an episode on that? And I said, I think it'll be a deep episode, because I don't know if I have the answer. The difference between a rule and a boundary, the best I could come up with right off the top of my head during the meetup was rules affect multiple people, boundaries affect you more than anyone else. So the reason I put it that way, I was thinking of this. You did a lot of snowboarding.
Mm-hmm. Big fan.
Big fan of snowboarding. The rules are don't fly by someone, don't go too fast, don't weave in and out of people, that type of stuff. Because if you do that, you might hurt someone. But there's boundaries that you're not supposed to go down the glades, you're not supposed to go near this thing, you're not supposed to go in this uncharted area. They set up boundaries so you don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you go do that,
so you don't get deaded.
So you might get hurt.
Yeah.
But nobody else is, because there's nobody else there doing it. You're not supposed to do it. You're not supposed to cross the boundary. I don't know what's going to happen to you if you cross the boundary. You might not come back. So if we're talking about internal rules and internal boundaries, I think rules are things that are really easy to look at externally. So every night, please put your dishes in the dishwasher. Like, that's a house rule. Please put your dishes in the dishwasher. Or we have a rule that, and again, these are hypothetical. These aren't necessarily rules. A rule that when you come into the house, you take your shoes off. That's a rule. Those might be rules. Underneath them is the boundary of why we do it. Well, for me, I get super weird when it comes to germs and people tracking stuff into the house. Maybe that's a boundary. A boundary is germs, the behaviors around that. A boundary is something where nobody else knows if it's being broken except for you. And it really doesn't affect anyone else except for you.
Until you communicate it.
And that's why it's so hard to communicate, because you're taking something that affects you and you're sharing how much that thing affects you with someone else. And that is where things can get wonky. So that's the best interpretation I have, is rules are external and for everyone to follow. Boundaries are internal and they're up to you to uphold. I don't know if you can expect anyone else to hold your boundaries for you, especially if they don't know them yet.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
How can they uphold a rule that isn't explicitly communicated?
Same thing, right? Yeah.
So, speed limit.
Mm-hmm.
Is it unsafe to drive 66? Or, and this is the fascinating thing, right? I always used to think about this, and maybe I'm weird, but it's not unsafe to drive 66. Statistically speaking, there are less accidents when people drive 65 or lower on the highway, but there's other highways in the middle of the country that are 75 miles an hour. I know different countries have kilometers, which probably makes a lot more sense, to be honest. For some reason, the U.S. was like, you know what? This metric system, we're going to can it.
I still don't understand any, like, I understand the differences, but I don't.
The metric system makes infinitely more sense.
Does it make more sense?
Yeah, significantly more sense
we'll
in every regard. So
we'll just do the opposite then.
A big fan of the United States in many regards, but that is not one I am a fan of. For some reason, we just made our own stupid things. But anyways, the rule of 65 miles per hour, let's just say. Does that mean that driving 70 is super unsafe? No. It means that, statistically speaking, if more people drive 70, then more accidents will happen and more people will get hurt. And so we're all trying to, when kids are born, they're always trying to push the boundaries. I remember when I was a teenager, I was always trying to find the limits. I always wanted to find the boundaries of everything. I needed to understand why we did what we did and how it all worked and all that kind of stuff. And teenagers can be very reckless. I'm sure you and I can relate to that.
Definitely.
There are several reckless things that I did to find the boundary, to find the limits. And the truth of the matter is, when it comes to your growth, you actually do have to find your own limits. So like last night, I was telling Kev this morning, I woke up this morning going, damn. Emilia and I have been ping-ponging back and forth a little bit, this kind of cold or whatever this is. And I kind of knew 2 nights ago, I hadn't done my Big 5 to Thrive. My Big 5 to Thrive quickly is writing, 20 minutes writing, 20 minutes WhatsApp, 20 minutes sales, 10 minutes mobility, and 30 minutes exercise every day. And if you do a Big 5 to Thrive, it's awesome because you keep the promises to yourself, you build self-worth, but it's brutal. It's really, really, really hard to keep up with. It's obnoxiously hard to keep up with, to be honest. But anyways, so I was at midnight the other night. It was sleeting, freezing rain. I hadn't exercised yet. So I went out in the cold, and I was like, I could go on the treadmill. I can go downstairs, go on the treadmill. I was like, you know what? I want to get out in nature. I want to go under the stars. The stars. It's raining, Alan.
Lack thereof.
But the point is I wanted some fresh air. Yeah, that was a mistake. Freezing cold, feet soaking wet, that whole thing. So now I pushed the boundaries. I pushed my limits too far, and I got sick. The problem in life, and this is kind of, I'll bring this back to boundaries, I promise, but one of the reasons why we don't grow to our maximum potential is because every time we push our limits, bad things happen. The saying, you either stay humble or you get humbled. That is so true. Every time I push a limit or push a boundary, I grow, but I also get smacked down. Now, unfortunately, a lot of us get smacked down by people that are haters or they're tearing you down, that kind of thing. I'm talking about life smacking you down. I'm talking about you work too hard for too long, you burn out, you get sick. You work too hard for too long, you get injured in the gym. You push the limits. You're like, okay, well, we're not spending a ton of quality time together, but that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Until eventually it's like, listen, we're not connected. What's going on? So you got to be careful. And so that's, I think, external boundaries. I feel like that's pushing the limits, the bounds of your potential. That's a different thing. What we're talking about is internal boundaries, which is setting the guardrails up for other people to respect you. Emilia said this one time on the Conscious Couples podcast. She said, a boundary is honoring a core value. It's a moat that you build around your castle to protect your core values. So, for example, when we were at Next Level Live, I pulled up a slide that had Tucker, Tilly, and Tiger Lily on it. Tucker, Tilly, and Tao, my 2 cats and my dog. And at the top, there was an orc. And I asked everyone in the room, who here has ever seen Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers? And everyone put their hand up, almost everyone. Kev had his hand
me.
up. Not Kev. Because I said, I bet you everyone's wondering why I have my 3 beautiful pets on here and then a giant orc from Helm's Deep. So if you understand the reference, in Helm's Deep, they storm the keep. Emilia, when she's working, the pets will literally storm the keep. So Tauriel knows how to open the doors, and they'll storm in right in the middle of her coaching call. And so it's my job to protect a boundary that she set. She said, please put them nap time, which is in our bedroom. We have a little Alexa that has a nap time playlist. While we're working, they stay in the bedroom together. We let them out at 3 p.m. But like, if I don't do that, which sometimes I forget because I'm busy or whatever, they'll storm the keep. And then in the middle of her coaching call, she'll have 3 pets like on her desk. And you know the deal. Fudge
Of course.
my
door's open. My door's open right now. The cats, sometimes they want it, sometimes they don't.
I'm surprised Fudge hasn't made an appearance.
No, Fudge is hiding.
Every now and then, I'll be on another podcast and I'll have my door open or whatever, and Tariel will make an appearance. So, but anyways, so the boundary thing, I never knew that bothered her until she had the courage to express it. And boundaries are not going to be honored if you're not expressing them. And then there's the trial period. You're not just going to be perfect. The moment that a boundary comes up, you can't expect the other person to completely, okay, I'll never miss again.
Next Level Nation, what is happening? If you've thought to yourself, I want to try coaching, but you don't really know where to start, group coaching would be a wonderful place for you. That's really why we created it in the first place. We start a new round every 90 days. So if you're hearing this, go to the website, nextleveluniverse.com, and we have the landing page where you can actually hold your spot right now. Even if there's a group going on right now, you can still lock your spot for the next one. The biggest thing that we've seen is as we get closer and closer to the date, unfortunately, some people end up missing. The group fills up and they can't do it, and then they end up regretting that. So please head over to the website. The link will be in the show notes, and we would love to see you there. I think it gets harder. I think when you set a boundary, it gets harder because if somebody doesn't understand why you're setting it, you have to explain it. And that makes it, that can be super challenging. One of the conversations Tara and I had was, hey, when the door is shut to the office, I kind of need you to treat it like I'm not here. Yeah. But
that's an entrepreneurship conversation right there.
For sure.
Yeah.
But sometimes she'll poke her head in and say, hey, I'm ordering groceries. Do you want anything specific? And it's the cutest thing. She did it when you and I were on a call recently. It's the cutest thing. She pokes her head in. It's the cutest thing. But I was so
but
afraid
that's her being playful with the boundary. Like, I respect your boundary, but I also want to be sweet, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and maybe
versus barging in, acting like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know?
But there's like levels to the boundary of she opens the door super, super quiet if she doesn't hear me talking. Sometimes I come in here and I shut the door because I'm just doing deep work. I'm not on an interview or anything. This was another thing I wanted to add.
Either that or Alan's on an epic monologue.
Yeah.
She doesn't hear you talking for 10 minutes. It turns
I got
out
to
you are
hold eye
recording.
contact with Alan. Rules are often upheld by other people. The boundaries you hold must be upheld by you. If I go 66, no one knows. Unless there's a cop sitting there and I get pulled over for doing a mile an hour speed. Probably not going to happen. If my boundary gets knocked down, I know for sure.
I have a story that I think is I've never been traditionally great at setting boundaries. And one thing I want to make clear to everybody, I think Kevin and I have these certain fundamentals that apply to everything. It's so cool. I think it's really cool. The Richter scale. If you grew up in an environment with no boundaries, you might not even notice when your boundaries are being infringed. So if you're used to being disrespected, you might not even notice it. Because if you're used to being disrespected at level 10, you're not going to notice a level 2 boundary infringement.
Should we explain the Richter scale?
Please.
It's very timely. There was actually a earthquake in New Jersey yesterday that was felt in Massachusetts and New Hampshire.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I didn't feel it.
Same.
I don't know why, but the relationship Richter scale is, the easiest way to explain it is there's an average of 10,000 earthquakes a year in California. Massachusetts, where we had Next Level Live, I think has 6. If you're somebody who grew up in California and you're used to an earthquake every single day, you might not feel it, right? You don't feel every single one. But you move to Massachusetts where there's like 6 a year, you're not even going to notice those 6. You're so used to it. You're conditioned.
You're going to be like, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
There was an earthquake today?
It's
like when Southern people, it snows down south.
Yeah, like 2 inches,
and all of a
the
sudden
state
they're
shuts
like,
down.
oh, yeah, exactly. The state shuts
and
down.
We got 3 or 4 inches yesterday, and it was like, it's just another day. It's fine. Nobody cares.
That's funny.
But if you grew up in, let's say, Massachusetts, and then you moved to California, you would be losing your mind because every other day you might be feeling an earthquake. And again, it's all hypothetical. But the thought is, if you grew up in a household when you were young where there's a lot of shouting and a lot of screaming and hopefully not, but maybe violence, you're not going to recognize someone who is like upset with you or maybe poking fun at you or frustrated with you. Where if you grew up in a household where there was never any raising of the voice, even a little bit of a raising of the voice might feel like a 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Where somebody else might say like, wait, they just swore at you? Why are you so angry about that? Like, that's like a 2 out of 10 for me based on what I experienced.
So when Emilia and I were first looking for houses, it was just a 3-month period of, during COVID, it was houses were going on the market and going off the market like the same weekend. It was just crazy. And I think things are still pretty crazy. I just don't know. But back then I knew because we were every single day studying the market, looking what was available, looking where different areas. And I remember we went to see 12 houses on a Sunday. We were trying to see 12 open houses. Worst Sunday ever. And the Emilia was trying to meet every open house appointment. She had the whole logistics, like, let's go, let's rock. And she's amazing at that. She used to be in real estate, so she knows the deal. So she's got the itinerary, let's rock. I don't like speeding around. I like safety in cars. I'm big on that. And she infringed on a boundary that I had never expressed.
Yeah.
And I said to her, we pulled over the car, and I said, please pull over. And I actually started crying. And I said, this is not okay with me. We're rushing around. Half of these houses we would never even consider. And I just don't want to be speeding around. I feel unsafe, this kind of thing. Yeah. And ever since then, she actually got this little beautiful emblem of the universe. It's hanging from her mirror, which apparently might be
illegal.
I don't know. Yeah, it's illegal. Whatever. The point is
breaking a rule, sir.
Yeah, breaking a rule, but not my boundary. And she says that this is a reminder to her not to speed. Because even when I'm not in the car, I don't like when she speeds.
Of course.
Yeah, I think that, obviously my father passed away in a car accident. Cars are really dangerous. I just want, her to be safe. So at the end of the day, but I needed to have the courage to actually, because the old me wouldn't have said anything. The old me might have just let that happen and then just dealt with it internally, the anxiety, versus actually having the courage to speak up. And so you have to have the courage to express your boundaries, and you have to be willing to take the feedback when you express them. So Emilia said, I really like it when we do the dishes before we go to bed so we wake up to a clean kitchen. And I say, well, I really don't want to do the dishes past 9 p.m. Right? So you have to be willing to find a way to drive to 5. I like integration rather than compromise, but at least you can find a new optimal. So Kevin and I do that in business all the time.
Of course.
I say, dude, this is a boundary for me. He'll say, well, this is how I feel about it. And then we'll find a better medium almost every time. There's always a better solution in between two great ideas. So
when we stand and fight, so whoever's
as long as we don't
standing last will accept that idea.
That is how they did it way back in the Vikings days.
Yeah, we
according to the show I've been watching,
we do a shootout. Walk 10 paces.
Duel.
Walk 10. Yeah, duel. Walk 10 paces and turn around.
And then whoever lives, their idea is better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but truth be told, when you do share boundaries, just expect a little bit of conflict. And the very last thing I'll say on this episode is, Emilia brought this concept to me that I never really thought about. She said relationships that think conflict are a necessary and can be a good thing always last and build better. So you and I don't consider conflict a negative thing. Obviously, we consider it a negative thing if it's like awful and we're jabbing each other and being terrible human beings. But how do you build a relationship? You grow and you evolve and you have healthy conflict that creates a bigger, better, brighter future. And if you're always avoiding conflict, you're probably not setting any boundaries. You're probably building resentment, and that's not good.
Constructive conflict.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Conflict.
That's good. It's a good label.
I like, C. I like alliteration. I'm a huge fan of alliteration. We'll do another episode on this at some point. Because I'm sure now that this is something that we're actually thinking about, I'm sure we'll have new distinctions that we can share and new stories and new lessons. Next Level Nation, we have, as we mentioned yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, our next round of group coaching, we pushed back a week so we could make sure everything was neat and organized because we were feeling the feels of Next Level Live. It is Tuesday the 16th. If you are interested and you've missed out on the other sessions we've had, we are looking for amazing, heart-driven, vulnerable, humble humans. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. This could be your first time ever doing anything like this. There are no recommendations or requirements on that. Just be a good person, and you most likely are because you listen to this podcast. If you enter promo code NLUListener at checkout, you will receive 30% off, and it ends up being $96.60 per month, and each month there are 4 calls. So it ends up being like $24 per call, which is a very, 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 very affordable price, and the reason it's affordable is because we want to help as many people as possible. So if you're interested, link will be in the show notes.
If you've ever considered doing coaching, this is the perfect way to dip your toe in without some crazy huge investment. So if you've ever been like, you know what, I wonder what coaching is like, try group coaching. This is a great way to dip your toe in.
Tomorrow, for episode number 1666, social media is taking us off the rails. Alan and I had a really interesting, powerful, funny conversation before we did this episode, so we'll do that tomorrow for a little Monday episode. As always, we love you, we appreciate you, grateful for each and every one of you, and at NLU, we don't have fans, we have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Keep honoring those boundaries. Next Level Nation.